Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics, and I've said before that I think it's a case of when, not if, concerning Boris Johnson's removal from office ever since early December. I don't even think North Shropshire swung it, though that heaped massive amounts of extra pressure on him. I think his fate was decided before then, really. But you get a sense of real urgency now amongst Conservative commentators, both in politics and in the media. They're utterly desperate. That Johnson's removal might be sooner rather than later. Some of them are relishing it. Some of them are desperately trying to fight against it. And given this, they are starting to swing behind their preferred candidate should Johnson fall. And I'm going to use as an example an opinion piece in the Times to illustrate the points I want to make. But first, if you'd like to be notified of daily news and politics, please subscribe to the channel and click the bell notification icon. So, the last few weeks, always a little bit of trepidation with this video. Wednesday morning, it's intended to come out. I'm recording it on Monday. Can't record on Tuesdays. Can't really record on Monday afternoons. So if there's any breaking news, but I don't think Johnson's going to be going in the next couple of days. I think they are waiting for something that's not going to be tomorrow. So when it comes to finding out what's going on in the heart of the Conservative Party, when you're politically opposed to the Conservatives, it's actually quite tricky because you don't really know people who can tell you. You are essentially dependent upon reading what correspondents claim is said, often off the record. You know, by those in the thick of it. No pun intended. Now, you can also read what they're writing in the media as well. That's easy. And you can see what they're publicly stating. That's easy. But here's where you have this odd dichotomy. Like, which would you give more credence to? An off-the-record anonymous statement or an attributed article in the mainstream media? Like, the problem with an off-the-record statement is it might not be true. You know, people can make things up, and who's going to call them out? But the thing is, when you read attributed articles in the media, they are oddly less likely to be true at times. You know, I was reading an article in the Times at the weekend, it's on Friday I think, that I know caught our friend Max Robespierre's attention. He expressed alarm that in this article, the author, Matthew Paris, a Times contributor, and it was an opinion piece, and he's spoken out against Boris Johnson many times, not a fan, was suggesting that if Liz Truss replaced him, she might make David Frost the Foreign Secretary and Jacob Rees-Mogg the Chancellor. I don't believe this. I'll explain why and then why the author might be suggesting it. First of all, the easy one, Jacob Rees-Mogg as Chancellor. Old Moggy. He's an electoral liability, pure and simple. During the 2019 general election campaign, Rees-Mogg was told to keep a low profile. Imagine that. He was a senior member of the government. He was told to be quiet during the whole general election campaign. This is because every time he opens his mouth, he pisses people off. He blamed the victims of Grenfell for lacking common sense for doing what they'd been told to do by the authorities. It was a bad look then. But can you imagine the second most senior member of the government being someone who reckons you're a bit thick if you follow the rules after we consider what is sinking Boris Johnson? Then consider that the economy is in really bad shape right now. The Tories are trying to claim that we are the fastest growing economy in the G7. Now, I've not worked it out myself, but what I do know is that we are the only member of the G7 not to have got anywhere near a recovery in terms of GDP since before the pandemic. We are far behind. If we are fast growing as a percentage, that is because we're starting from a low base. It's the usual thing about, you know, if two people find a fiver, if you've only got 50 quid to your name, that's worth 10, you've increased your wealth by 10%. If you've got like 10,000 quid in the bank, it's like next to nothing as a percentage increase in your wealth. But it's the same wealth. But the actual strength of the economy in GDP terms is poor compared to comparable economies. And Brexit will ensure that there is limited scope for any chancellor to do much about it. Labour's Shadow Chancellor Rachel Reeves has been saying, I've said this before, the reason the Tories are a high tax party is because they're a low growth party. There's limited levers that they can operate. And against this background, can you imagine making Rees-Mogg Chancellor? He's not that bright, doesn't actually understand economics, and has fantasy notions when it comes to what's good for a workforce. Putting him in charge of the economy would be like putting a flat earther in charge of your space programme. It might be hilarious for those opposed to the Tories because he could single-handedly cost them the election, but I doubt that he could ever be placed into that role by anyone who actually wants the Tories to win. You know, like a Tory Prime Minister. Then David Frost as Foreign Secretary. Now, it's not just that David Frost is an unelected lord. It's that this is the only political position he's ever had. He has never won public office in an election. He got away with being made Brexit Secretary because it's not a real job in the minds of supporters. After all, we only need a Brexit Secretary to deal with Brexit. And once we get to the sunlit uplands where the unicorns prance, we won't need them anymore. And we don't have a Brexit Secretary right now, like Liz Truss, who's the Foreign Secretary, has taken over that brief. But Foreign Secretary is different. Global Britain and all that. It's one of the most senior positions in government. It's below Prime Minister and Chancellor, but it's on the next tier down alongside Home Secretary. To put an unelected bureaucrat into such a position might be too much irony even for Conservative Brexit voters. And I can't imagine how it would be seen by Conservative anti-Brexit voters. I can well see her giving a ministerial position to him again. Frost is after all popular amongst the party membership. But how popular is he really amongst the public? And whomever takes over from Johnson is going to have to be laser focused on the election. They will have a maximum of 2 years to get ready. Ideally 1 year, because the economy is not going to get any better with an extra year of hard Brexit. And the idea of doing both of those things, Moggy as Chancellor, Frost as Foreign Secretary, boggles the mind. Making an intellectually limited Victorian undertaker the Chancellor and an unelected bureaucrat the Foreign Secretary would be madness. Because, also consider her support in Parliament. She needs Tory MPs on her side. Now, the best way to do this is to give factional leaders a plum spot in the cabinet. If you take out 2 of the top 4 cabinet positions with those 2, she'll put a lot of noses out of joint. So why would Paris even write such a thing? Possibly because he wants to put people off Truss. He has described her last month as an empty vessel. Now, you can read into that he is no fan of the current Foreign Secretary. He knows this article is going to be read by Conservatives. It's a Conservative paper. He knows that it will be read by some people who will have a say in the leadership contest, whether they be MPs or party members. Put Truss in charge and she'll put Rees-Mogg in charge of the economy and Frost in charge of foreign affairs. That's what he's saying, as if the implication is being it would be madness and absolute ruin to our party and our country. It's got the same energy as vote Corbyn and he'll bankrupt the country and put terrorists in charge of the police. It's alarmist speculation to shamelessly trash the reputation of someone they do not want to see get the keys to number 10. And we will see a lot of this in the Tory press, especially now. I felt that Johnson would probably have many more months yet to go before he had the tap on the shoulder. Indeed, he may still have. I'm quite convinced that a lot of Tory MPs still desperately want to keep him until the summer at least. They probably know he's got to go before the election, but not just yet. But there's a real buzz that he may be facing his challenge or being persuaded to resign in a matter of weeks. Because right now, Tory MPs are waking up to the fact that he's causing damage, reputational damage to them, not just himself. It's spreading. Certainly, if the Gray report and his attacks on the BBC and his own staff don't help, and the polls continue to tank, Tory MPs will have to act sooner rather than later, even if they would normally prefer to wait. And those with a vested interest in what follows don't want to be caught out. There's no point in waiting until he falls. During the race to succeed Theresa May, it was felt that Sajid Javid got nowhere because he hadn't prepared himself enough. He didn't have a long enough run-up. He was late to the party and he fell behind immediately. Now, I'm not saying he could have won, but you would have expected him to have a stronger showing than he did. And the stakes are very high here. Once Conservatives are resigned to the notion that their vote-winning machine is knackered and needs replacing, they will be keen to make sure that the replacement doesn't just do a better job of governing, or at least as they would see it, but is equal to the task of campaigning as well. After all, if they're destined to lose the next election, they may only have 1 more year to do any actual governing before they'll be resigning themselves. People with a voice amongst Conservatives will have been putting serious thought into this and into who and who is not suitable. So you would expect mud to be slung at those they consider unsuitable candidates and praise to be offered to those who might be considered suitable. So when you read a comment piece like this, you may well be getting the author's genuine opinion in general, but don't be surprised to see it embellished with wild speculation designed to either build up or pull down a potential candidate according to what they think is best. The race to succeed Johnson started last month. The supporters of the eventual winner have not been waiting for the regicide before getting into gear. They're already on the move. And not all of them will be championing their preferred candidate. Indeed, they may dedicate most of their time to tearing down those who would challenge their preferred candidate. Such is the nature of political skullduggery. But those are my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comments below. Hope you found the video interesting. If you did, don't forget to click the like button. If you'd like to support the channel further, please also click the Patreon link for details. And until next time, I'll see you later.